Wow.
There we go.
There we go. Looking good, Andre. Great to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Yeah. So, got a lot to talk about as always. What are you up to in LA right now?
I'm actually giving a speech tomorrow for a company out of LA. It's a tax attorney, friend of mine. You know, Mike and Rosalind.
Yeah, from Genius. Yeah.
From Genius, yeah. They have an event tomorrow, and it started today actually, but I'm speaking tomorrow.
What are you going to talk about?
Just resiliency, going forward. How do you press on? Finding that courage to step out from what everybody else is doing and do what you want to do.
Yeah. So obviously there's been, more violence, another shooting, rioting, looting, multiple other shootings by vigilantes, all this sort of stuff going on this week. And, who better to hear from than you on this topic? I was, just wondering what your initial reactions, thoughts, what you hope people take away from this.
I mean,
sounds like.
Ideally, we want to stop losing people to death. That's first and foremost. We don't want to make a point by people dying or people being paralyzed in this instance. That's not the way we want to make points. We don't want to make points by people's businesses being torn to shreds or set on fire. We don't want to make points by regular citizens attacking each other. I mean, at some juncture, the leadership, it falls on the current leadership, but it's not a Trump thing. Trump didn't start this. So I'm not going to say this is all about Trump and the current administration. This has been going on since George Washington. So at some point, the leaders that are elected leaders have to say, we're going to step in and we're going to lead the way. Because right now, you have the people on the ground leading the way. And it takes me back to no taxation without representation, because I'm from Boston, where the British were oppressing the citizens, and people said enough is enough. We're paying taxes. We're paying. We're not getting our fair due. So what did the Americans do at the time? They had the Tea Party, they dressed up as Indians, and they attacked the soldiers, and they started the Civil War between British and America because they felt as though they were paying too much and not getting enough and being oppressed. So they understand the concept because that's what the country was founded on, because this was a British country. It's a British colony. And people who are here is like, why are we paying all this money and getting no representation? Here we are, a gazillion years later, Black people are saying the same thing that the Americans were saying during, I don't know if we were deemed Americans then, during the British rule. We're paying taxes. We are definitely paying taxes. We've definitely contributed. We're a positive aspect and value add, but we're not getting represented. There's no representation when it gets to the government level. So no different than the beginning of the American war with Britain. We're saying collectively, how do you have this group of people who are paying taxes into the system, helping the system thrive, but they have no voice?
Mm-hmm.
And
the opposite of a voice.
The governors, the president, the Congress, the Senate, all these folks stop playing, well, I'm from this jurisdiction, I'm from that jurisdiction. They say, okay, let's call a mandatory meeting. And let's sit down and say, listen, we have a problem. And the problem is this, and they need to address it. They had these meetings when Iraq was going out of control. They had these meetings when Russia was out of control. They've had these meetings numerous times. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, they said, stop everything. We have a problem. We need to address it collectively. And they shut everything down, and they went and they declared war. We need to declare war on people being persecuted without representation.
Yeah, that's a really powerful statement. And that's a good analogy, too, to the American Revolution, because it was a protest and it was a civil war at that time. It was Britons against Britons. Nobody thought of themselves differently until, that went about. And so I'm wondering, for different communities affected by this, watching, the latest wave of protests and the shooting of Jacob Blake, how do you hope, the white community responds to this? How do you hope the black community responds to this? The
Well,
police community?
the
What looks like an effective response?
I know this is a crazy thing. I know some police officers. I don't know them all, but I know some. And I know some who are not in favor of just gunning people down. I mean, they might not be trying to fix the black community. They might not be trying to fix the educational system, but at least they're saying, I'm going to arrest you when you do something wrong. They don't take on the responsibility of fixing the community, but they're going to police the community based on the law. So I really can't argue that. I'm saying I can't be mad at that. What we're seeing in these instances is not policing. What happened in Minnesota was not policing. What happened in Wisconsin was not policing. That's not policing. That's just, I can do whatever I want to these people because they have no value and they have no voice. That's slavery mentality of, who cares? It's just a nigga. So we can just kill him or do whatever we want to him because he doesn't matter. And back in the days, if you killed somebody's slave, you give him 10, 15 bucks and you keep it moving. You go on to lunch. Like, yo, I killed your slave. He got on my nerves when we shot him. Well, how much was he? He was worth 50 bucks. You get 50 bucks to keep it moving. And they dragged the body off. So for the police community, I want the police to just say, hey, you're making us look. At some point, the police have to say, this group is making us look bad. This group of people are painting us as horrible people. Horrible people. Now, we have the no snitching policy that's labeled into the community. No snitching started with the police. Don't cross the thin blue line. You don't talk on your brother. So stop snitching is a police concept that's been shifted to the inner cities. So them not wanting to go against their brother in blue, nobody wants to work with somebody they can't trust or whatever the story is. They know who each other are. When I was in prison, I knew who was selling dope. I knew who was running the card game. I knew who it is. I mean, I mind my business. You know something? That's for them to catch. Mm-hmm. But if I was a correctional officer and I knew that same information, I'd be obligated to turn it in. Mm-hmm. So the police know who the good ones are and the bad ones are. I shouldn't have to wait until I get pulled over and play Russian roulette. I'm more than you're on campus at Stanford. You know who the better professors are. You know who the weaker professors are. You know who the really stringent, organized professors are. You know who the freewheelers are. So if there's somebody on campus that's not really up to par, y'all know it. Or you will find out throughout your mechanisms and through conversation. And I would hope, considering the amount of money it costs to go to Stanford, that somebody would say, we have a professor in the other wing. He's coming to work drunk every day. He's coming to work high every day. He's not showing up for class. He's not really grading tests. That wouldn't be tolerated at Stanford.
Yeah.
And so you would pull him in the office and give him an opportunity. Listen, professor, the word is you're drinking too much. We call them cowboys. In the prison system in Massachusetts, we call the police who like to attack or fight cowboys. There are some people, there are some COs, not all, who took a job for the sole purpose of being able to attack and beat blacks. It's not everybody, but there were some who they had that, something, I want to fight a black guy and I want to beat him up and torture him. I want to do my variation of whatever they were doing in the 1600s. And they took the job for that purpose. And they take assignments within the prison that puts them in that position. There are tons of white guards and regular guards who just know something. I'm here to do my job. But my point is not to say that racists exist or haters exist. My point is the large majority of people who are doing the right thing knows who the other ones are. And they're the ones who need to stop being silent. We shouldn't have to come on the police force and try to figure out who's a racist. We should have to come on the police force and govern who should be allowed in what community. They can do that themselves, but it takes courage to say, Johnny, you come on. I've been around you since I was 15. I already know.
Yeah.
But they're not policing each other to help this stop. But now, then when the thing goes up, it becomes us against them. And so a cop kneeling at a protest is great. I need a cop in the squad room to say, hey, Sarge, or pull a guy to the side if you don't want to put him on blast, but don't stand around and say nothing. So that's why I want the police, for them to police each other. And if there's a cop been on the force for 15 years and you don't know who he is, then you ain't good cops.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't detect the racism amongst yourself after 10 years of working with somebody, either he's really, really good or you're really, really slow. And I don't know, they're not that slow, or you're just turning a blind eye. For the Black community, it's the same thing we've been dealing with since the boat pulled up. You just got to hold on. We got to hold on until the liberal whites, abolitionists of 2020 say enough is enough. Because when we were slaves, all we could do was hold on and hope that somebody would recognize that this is just utterly wrong. And eventually, Northern whites, for whatever reason, I don't know what sparked them, they finally said, enough is enough. It was never, I said it before, it was never the cries of slaves, of ancestors of slaves, of nobody in Black, never the cries of slaves turned the hearts of the masses who owned them. Never. It was always, well, that's what you're supposed to do, complain. And it's my job to keep working or whatever else I want to do. So right now, the cries of Black folks, just as regular Black folks, are not enough. We need the collaboration and the voices of the people that matter. I was saying, until the people who matter say what happens to the folks who don't matter isn't right, it'll keep happening. So if I'm jumping a white guy in the hood, can't no white guy come tell me to stop. It better be somebody I know and respect. Another brother, yo, Dre, man, don't do that. Let that go. And I'll entertain that. But if some random white guy comes around the corner while I'm beating a white guy, he's going to get beat up too. Man, listen, I beat white guys. Why am I going to listen to another white guy? So if I trash Black people, why am I all of a sudden going to listen to Black people? It's a matter of we need Black people to just do what we've been doing, stay steadfast, stay in the game. We've come. It's horrible to still be in it, but we've come through and we're still pushing through, and it's not a win until we're all the way there. And Malcolm X made a statement back in the day. He said, don't celebrate pulling a knife halfway out my back. Talk to me when the knife is all the way out of my back. And right now, slavery is halfway off the table. So don't think, well, we let you vote in some instances. We let you have property in some instances. We let you have jobs in some instances, but it's not, so you should be happy. You can do all these things that you couldn't do before, except for randomly get killed when we feel like killing you, or being redlined in certain districts where you can't move out of. So this is better than before. I don't want better than before. Better than before is a plus, but I'm not selling for better than before. It should be across the board equal. And the thing is, what does across the board equal look like? So for white communities, I mean, pandemic can't make you have to watch. And all I ask, and if you're a white person in America, see, when you wake up in the morning, Stephen, you have the option. Do I want to engage in this Black stuff, or do I want to go on to my bubble and just live my life out? When I wake up in the morning, I don't have that option. I have to think, literally, every time I pass a police car in this country, in my life, I'm looking. Is he moving? Is he coming? Is the lights behind me? That's just my day. So for white folks, when you wake up, it's like, do you want to, this is a real question. This is the baseline, bottom line question. Do you want to consider all Blacks as Americans? That's it. Do you want to say, because we do the flag, we do patriotic, we do 4th of July, we do all the holidays, we do all the ceremonies. I get that. Do you, as white America, want to consider Black folks real Americans? Because once you say yes, then what you're saying yes to is they should get what Americans get. Now, when the Constitution was written, we weren't included. So I get that. When a lot of the laws were made, we weren't included. And I get that. So this is 2020. So does white America want to wake up and say, I want to consider American-born Blacks full citizens with full rights as everybody else? And everybody else is being us, white folks. And because I grew up never feeling American because I just didn't. I grew up, and that's just not just where I live, but how I was made to be felt. So I'm asking my white American brothers and sisters, when you wake up, let's ask yourself this one question. Not do you agree, disagree with police brutality. Do you believe Black Americans should be considered just Americans? Let's take the black part off. When's the last time somebody asked you how you feel to be white? When's the last time you was considered the white professor or the white journalist or the white coach or the white dad? I mean, we get that tagged on the front of us across the board. First black coach won the Super Bowl. First black coach to do this. First black man to do that. He's a black owner. We get the minority tag put on everything we do.
Yeah.
We don't do that to Indians. We don't do that to, we don't say Arab, he's the first Arab, or he's the first Indian, or he's the first Port. It's black. It's a clear distinction and a label that goes along with being black.
Yeah.
And so we just want to say, if that's what it's going to be, call it that. So you know something? Nah, you're not full Americans. We're going to keep calling you Black Americans.
Yeah.
And the Afro-American thing is just a reminder of we're separate. Because we don't call anybody Irish American. They might be Irish Americans. But when they go to check out their box on the, whatever form it is, it doesn't say Irish American, German American, Swedish American. It says American. It might say Caucasian. So I'm cool with American and Black. But it gets to the point like, all them check boxes, we want to know. Tell us who you are. Are you Black or you Caucasian?
Yeah. And that's a distinction that is made, so salient in so many different ways, institutionally, on the forms, in the way we talk about people and their accomplishments, and then in everyday life and the way you're treated differently by, law enforcement. I think is just the tip of the iceberg, but it's something that a lot of people have to be on guard all the time, especially if they live in certain parts of the country. They can't have the freedoms that other people have to just walk around their neighborhood and feel safe and at home, or not have to worry about looking over their shoulder, to see who might be chasing them or following them around.
Right. We can come up with a lot of wonderful, great ideas, but the greatest idea would be, first, do we want to consider Black people Americans in real terms, not just in symbolism? Do we want to consider Black folks American? That's the first thing. And the second thing is, do we want to stop removing all these labels that we place on everything? Because it only adds to the division. We can't be united when I got to check 8 boxes and tell you I'm not the same as you.
And that's interesting. I wonder about that, because I think in a lot of ways it comes from, in certain instances, that differentiation or that marking or recognition of who's Black and who's not, and who's the first Black person to do this, or how many Black people are there in this institution. That comes from a good place, right? Like they're trying to, uplift and enrich Black people who may not have had the opportunity or whatever to get into this situation. And they're trying deliberately to, increase representation or increase the power of the Black community by recognizing it as Black. So I wonder if we could make that distinction between when it's harmful and when it's helpful to recognize someone's.
If we're going to be Americans, let me be American. And if you don't want to hire me, I don't care how many boxes I check. You don't want to hire me. So when they was doing the quotas and we want to hire so many people, when they did the civil rights thing, mainly women got hired because they were classified as minorities. And they started looking for every minority other than Black males to hire. So if you go through all the ranks of all the people who got hired, numbers prove out. Black men did not benefit from the civil rights quotas. And if Black men are to be the head of the household, and that's where we want our family structure is broken down, we say, or the family structure I know and I grew up under, father, head of the household, breadwinner, mom, she can work, she can have her thing, then the kids. So let's go back to the nuclear family, as we call it, where father was the head of the household, and that's much stuff. He made more money than mom, but he definitely had a good job. So now mom has a job and dad doesn't, which takes what we call a nuclear family out of balance. So right now, there are more single mom-led households than single dad-led households. So we need to get back to the structure that America built. Mom, dad, in kids. Well, we need mom, dad, when dad to have jobs.
Hmm.
So, but
And
right now, again, 1 in 4 black folks in jail or in prison. 1 in 3 are on supervised probation. How do you have 25% of a population under supervision? 25% of white folks ain't under supervision. 25% of Latinos ain't under supervision. Why 25% of black folks? And it goes down to they're not American. So if I'm not American, I understand why you treat me this way. If you don't see me as a countryman, I see why you treat me this way. And it makes sense. So I know so many people who are solid, they're great, and I can scream them out all day long, and they individually love me, care for me, and care for people who look just like me and not. But then there is those who just say, you know something, the system is the way it is, and it is the way it is, and it's not my fault. I didn't make it. I'm just going to just keep going. It works fine for me. Status quo. What's the big problem? The big problem is we have civil unrest in our country. The big problem is getting to the point where it can no longer be ignored. This could be ignored before internet. This could be ignored before social media. This could be ignored. Videos. So if you were the young white kids we have protesting now, even the other white folks in the country, you were isolated. You lived in whatever area you lived in. You were in an insulation. You was really in a bubble. They couldn't be penetrated because unless you saw it on the 6 o'clock news, it didn't happen. Now it happens. They have tickers that go 24 hours. There was no 24-hour news when we were kids. What year did CNN stop?
No idea.
80s? Came out in the 80s. So now you have instantaneous news, and we could be our own news channel. We could be playing videos and broadcasting it to the world. You don't have to rely on any major news channel to disseminate what's happening.
That's the form of what this is right here.
If that would have happened, and whatever news station would have caught the footage, they wouldn't have released it. They would have had to go through a lot of bells and whistles to release that footage. But because it's on an individual cell phone, it's available right now.
And we have social media
I believe
channels.
They said the footage didn't show the whole story. And it could be me. But when the guy was shooting him, it looked like he was just like dazed out or something. Like I was trying to watch his face as if like he's shooting him like he doesn't even know he's shooting him, but I can hear the bullets and it's definitely going in him. But he just looked like he was zoned out, not to excuse or justify, but it's like, it's like he might as well been shooting some animals.
Yeah, and that's, you know, everybody watches that, and you know, and I think people's pre-existing beliefs sort of totally color how they see something, even on an objective video. You know, everybody's looking at the same thing. And if you're inclined, you know, not to believe it, then you say, oh, what was happening before? What did he do? What is all this? And if you're inclined to,
what he did,
you know,
from the time I saw the video, he was walking away. Now, the question is it a death sentence to walk away from the police officer? And the answer is yes. You turn your back on the police officer and you walk away, you just, whatever I can kill you now. How dare you turn your back on me and walk away? For that, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
So I'm scared for my life. Well, how about you don't chase him?
You're scared. Go hide.
You don't have to duck and run. He's going to a car full of kids. Well, he might have had a gun in the car. He might have had this in the car. But the whole thing is what they don't show, unless the story's right or wrong, the story I heard is that guy was breaking up a fight between 2 women. Whatever it was, when they came upon the scene, he's not armed. He's not attacking anybody. Why the need to draw guns? You draw guns if he has a weapon. He brandishes a weapon, pull your gun out. He got a tank top on, his hands are clear. There's at no point do I see a need to pull out a weapon from what I saw. I don't see everything on the front end, but you got an unarmed man standing in front of you. And it's 3 or 4 cops who've been trained in a lot of stuff that you don't have to go to deadly force. Did he lunge? No, he walked away. At the end of the
Hmm.
day, what was said, he turned his back and he walked away.
Right.
So
Yeah.
evidently, I don't know. I know, but it's just more the same. We can theorize and try to figure it out, but the baseline is man gets shot 7 times in the back
Hmm.
and he's
Yeah.
paralyzed
In front of his children.
in front of his kid. And
Hmm.
this isn't the first time someone's shot in front of their kids.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, at what point do you say it's not a coincidence?
Yeah. Right. I know. It's awful to watch, to think about, to contemplate, but that's the reality of it. And I think you're right that any police officer who feels that he's not being listened to or disrespected or whatever, and the racist lens that he might see other people through is going to incline him towards murder, towards shooting someone, towards escalating to the highest level. Yeah.
It's like I said, one of those cops should have been able to have. I do mediation and I speak for a living. I would happily spend the next 10 years doing police trainings on communication
Hmm.
because the ability to communicate is everything. And
Yeah.
evidently, they lack the ability to communicate and communicate effectively. Because if you have effective communication, and I mean, I used to be in the penitentiary, and I'm dealing with guys who got knives in their hand. Forget angry. I'm talking about they got knives in their hand in a 100-year sentence. I got to talk to them in real time.
Hmm.
And you got to talk to them in real time while they're emotional and upset. And there's a way you can do that. And you don't
Yeah.
de-escalate by sticking a gun in somebody's face. That's not a
Hmm.
de-escalation tool.
Yeah.
That is the opposite of a de-escalation tool. You're going to escalate it. So what kind of training are they giving the cops? You're a white cop. You're in a black neighborhood. You're going to pull up on a scene. And there's going to be all black people. Languages, terminologies, vernacular, all matters.
Hmm.
You're saying attitude, stances, movements, all matter. So
Hmm.
when you pull up, you're saying, how do you just, when you first walk up, how do you de-escalate it in your approach? Hey,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Get up. You don't, nobody move. That's the last thing you should say. Hey, good afternoon, y'all. I mean, you got a gun. You don't have to come off with a dark voice. If I got a hostile situation, I try to inject, not so much comedy, but I try to inject a light vibe to see if I can get this thing going in my direction. But what is the
Yeah.
direction I wanted to go in? Is the question.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
What are
it's
you coming
like,
in? What sort of intentions they have?
yeah, are you just here to say, so I'm just going to mediate this and shoot? Am I looking to escalate it? Because I don't want to say he did or didn't do, made that man walk off. But when they had him in conversation, what was the conversation? That's what I want. What was
Hmm.
the conversation that even made the man walk off? In that instance, if that cop or one of those 3 cops could have got through to him communicating, then okay, now you got a shot. Same thing, we go back to
Hmm.
George Floyd. At some point, you didn't even try to talk to him.
Hmm.
It's slam the ground, handcuffs, knee on the throat. I'm not even talking to you.
Right.
Nothing you says matter.
Yeah.
Nothing you're gonna say out your mouth matters to me.
Yeah, and I think the speed where you see that reaction, I think that's what really belies the racist mentality that goes into it, is how quickly they tend to do that for black people and black men in particular, and how it hardly ever happens to white people who are mouthing off to the police, who are, you know, just directly being confrontational and disrespectful. They get the slow treatment, they get the talk down, they get the mediation and the conflict
Because
de-escalation.
as a white cop, I see that kid as my son.
Hmm.
That could be, so I feel as though I might be able to get through to him because
Hmm.
he
Hmm.
reminds me of my 18-year-old or 22-year-old kid.
Hmm.
So when I walk up on him, I feel inclined that I can communicate.
Yeah.
And I feel as though he'll listen to me or I have a chance. When I'm seeing somebody I don't relate to, I don't know their history, don't know their story, don't know anything, I don't feel the connectivity. I don't feel as though I have the space. So I'm going hardline. And
Do you think,
sensitivity,
yeah, do you think black communities and the police can establish trust with each other so that they're less inclined or more inclined to feel that way towards each other, more that they could get through to each other and talk?
it goes back to I'm thinking to myself, as of the last couple of days, how do you fix this? Because it comes down to relational conversations between white cops and black citizens. And I don't know about the police training, but I'm thinking they're off on whatever island or whatever space practicing shooting guns. That seems to be a lot of the training. Let's practice shooting guns, and that seems to be the, how do you shoot? How do you reload? How do you shoot some more? That every cop gets that training. So where does the training come in with dealing with the community we're going to drop you in? So, I mean, I'd love to see some kind of, on the front end, some kind of community engagement before you give them guns. I hate to give them like third-party ideas. You got 20 guys going to be cops. You move them into the neighborhood. They got to stay down there without no guns for 6-7 weeks. And they're going to have to go walk to the store, walk to the market, wash their clothes at the corner, go in the bodega, and something to get them acclimated to where they're going. If you live in the suburbs and the only time you come to the cities and the police got a gun on your hip, it's going to be two worlds, merged.
Yeah, right. And understandably, people are going to react to you.
The first few times I went to dinner with white folks, and they ordered different. It took me a while to get adjusted. I mean, I would go to dinner and I feel awkward. Like, okay, well, how am I going to do this? I'm going to dinner. I got some rich white friends that take me to dinner. I'm like, I'm ordering the cheapest thing on the menu. Give me some chicken. Give me chicken fingers. Because I don't want to seem like I'm spending somebody else's money. And I went through this three or four or five dinners. I'm scared to order what I want because I don't want to look bad. I don't look like I'm being greedy or taking advantage. And I realized after, like, nobody cares what Andre's ordering. They're ordering like 9 bottles of wine, having a great time, and I had chicken fingers. And nobody cares. But in my mind, I didn't fit in, and even though they were my friends, I had all these things in my head, so I had to work through being comfortable enough to just order what I wanted. It wasn't about who was paying, it was about, Andre, be comfortable. But you can't just tell me that. I had to go through 4, 5, 6 dinners with different people before I actually felt comfortable ordering what I really wanted, regardless of what it cost. I didn't I can order the most expensive thing now, but if there's something I wanted, and I'm at dinner, order what you, somebody says order what you want, but it takes a while to get comfortable. So they just take white folks from the suburbs and drop them in the city, and now you're in an authority position where you don't have the opportunity or time to get to know me because you're at work. When you come in, you're on the clock. And you come in, for the lack of a better term, the truth is you're the enemy. Yeah. When you're a cop and you pull up in the city, you're the enemy. So once you get that uniform on, it's hard to interact with people in a day-to-day fashion. So how do we create scenarios where they can have conversations and relations with people who they're going to police or be like the people they're going to police? Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, that experience that you had, that's what gives you that cultural competence to deal with new groups of people. And, everybody experiences that as they go through life. And anybody watching, you can think about times when it was your first time going into, your new job or a new social situation or a different racial group or a different socioeconomic class, rich or poor. And it takes practice and it feels uncomfortable at first, but it's really important if you're going to be able to interact with this group of people effectively to learn the style, learn the culture, learn the mannerisms and the ways of being in that community.
I mean, and if you don't understand the language, like I was hanging out with some Spanish people. I'm in New York. I'm hanging out with Spanish people. They speak Spanish. At the time, I didn't speak Spanish. And then we're out one night and the girl speaking Spanish, you know what I'm saying? And she talking to a guy, she pointed, talking about, he molested me. I was like, wow, I'm ready to jump on the guy. I'm like, yo, let's whip him right now. Pedophile. Molester in Spanish means mad. She was like, he's mad at me. Yeah. He's like, I don't know if she was mad at him, he was mad at her. All I heard was molester me. And I'm like, I'm ready to pull out guns and start shooting. Because I didn't, if it had just been left to me on those words, I'd have shot that man. I didn't have a gun, but in theory, he needs to die. He's a pedophile. I'm saying she wasn't a 5-year-old, but he raping people. Where I come from, rapists are not cool. This man just raped somebody. He needs to be punished. These are all the things that are running through my mind. but I didn't understand the language. Molester in Spanish means mad. Has nothing to do with sex. But I didn't speak the language, so I misunderstood. I'm on a whole tangent by myself.
Yeah.
And had I pulled out a gun and started shooting the guy, oh, what are you doing, Drake? He's a rapist. What are you talking about? She said he raped her. Then they'd ask her, nah, I'm mad at him because he didn't pick up the such and such from the store. No, you said he raped him. No, I didn't. I said he's mad at him. Then I'd have found out cultural differences, language differences is different. I mean, so when you got a white cop coming into the hood and people are talking slang or talking their variation of English and he doesn't understand the latest terms, that white cop not knowing the latest terms can get you killed.
Right. So yeah, misunderstanding can be deadly.
It's not even just you don't understand. It's like, oh, I literally heard that word and I gave the English context. He's gonna hear white cops will come to the city and they're gonna hear terminology they're not familiar with. When I was in prison, when the Spanish guys came in like the late 80s, the police, the COs were terrified because they couldn't speak the language. You got a whole group of people that can talk in front of you and you don't know what they're saying. I never saw the police more terrified because they had no idea what was being said 2 feet away from them. And Spanish people talk loud, they're energetic, and all the rest of that stuff. And the police were terrified. Black guys weren't scared. White guys weren't scared. Asian guys not scared. The Latinos guys came in, they started, they started going in Spanish, scared the police out of their minds. They couldn't understand what was being said.
Yeah. And they're going to be tense and they're going to be on edge and they're going to be, you know, the less they feel comfortable with the situation. You're not getting a break.
They're jumping on you before you jump on them. Now, what's happening is we have a bad communication problem and we have a bad leadership problem because we're not, as leaders, leading. We're reacting and we're responding. I'm saying leaders say, okay, let's get ahead of this. And for companies, all the white companies, they're like sitting around like, oh my God, we were hoping George Floyd was the last one because after George died, all the companies got put on blast. Where do you stand? Where do you stand? Where do you stand on this issue? And some of them stood up. They tried to make the Black Tuesday post, whatever, and they were hoping, oh my God, I hope this doesn't happen again. We got at least 10, 12 months to get around the corner. Here it is 2 months later. So we're back at white companies. What is your stance? Where do you stand on this? NBA shut down. Baseball shutting down. Soccer and football shutting down. I mean, if you think about it, if you take Black people out of this culture, it's not going to run the way you think it does. We're low-key essential to the culture.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope people take notice. I hope white people take notice. I think Black people have been trying every means at their disposal to try to get attention for what's happening. And more people are noticing, but hopefully enough pay attention and notice and take action that, we turn some corners with the culture, with legislation, with, everything that affects, what the things that are oppressing Black people in the United States.
What's oppressing us is the silence of the people in charge. That's what's oppressing us. It's not the guy who lives next door to me who doesn't like me. It's the government that gives him the authority to kill me. Him not liking me, check this out. Say you're a Black racist. They'll laugh at you in this country. You can't be a Black racist. Shut up. You're a Black racist. You don't like white people, so what? That's a joke. You don't think there were Black people who didn't like white people during slavery? Nobody cared. It was like, yeah, you don't like white people, so what? You can't do nothing.
Yeah.
You not liking white people meant nothing. And I am more than positive there was a handful of Black people at least who did not like white folks during slavery. But them not liking them meant nothing to the folks in charge. So the guy next door to me who doesn't like me says, well, man, the vibe says I can do something to this man and get away with it. If I go outside and scream, black man robbed me, they're sending the whole army out here. There was a case in Boston, the Charles Stewart case. Man pulled in, He's got a pregnant wife. He decided whatever reason he wanted to kill her. So his plan, he drove into a black housing project, shot his wife, killed her, called the police, and said a black kid did it. I swear to God, they tore the entire side of the projects up, the entire city up. Anything black and male got beat. It was so bad, they got a confession out of somebody. Picture that. Man confessed to killing a white pregnant woman. Then they found out a week later that he did it. You know why? Because they beat him in the confession. That they were like, when that happened, you killed a pregnant white lady? Are you? There's lines. Oh my God. Oh no. They tore that entire side of the city up. Anything male and black caught it. And lo and behold, the guy shot his own wife. But in his mind, a plausible story is say black man did it. He wasn't a cop. I don't know if he was racist. He was just somebody trying, what's the best way I can kill my wife and get away with it? Blame it on a black guy. They'll believe that.
Yeah, he could. That was the social signals that he was getting. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I don't know that. I don't think that man was any place in the city doing anything with anybody. He just decided he wanted to kill his wife, whatever reason. And the best plan he could come up with is driving to the projects and blaming on a black guy. And it was believed that fast. They believed him. And they went through beating and shaking down everything because you don't shoot a pregnant white woman. Oh no. That's and then she died. They had black cops beating people. It was just, but that's a believable narrative, and that's a justification. When Emmett Till allegedly whistled at a white girl, they beat him to death. So when this black guy allegedly shot a white girl, you go through, you beat them all. When a white guy got offended in Tulsa, Oklahoma, they burned down the city. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to do what you want to do to black folks, and you can get away with it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what everybody is calling for, is that people don't get away with it anymore. And that's one of the things that people are looking for is convictions and charges and, immediate punishments.
I mean, the convictions and charges is all a necessity, and that's a reality. But what I want, as I said this before, it's going to keep happening until we educate the young. So the solution to racism in America is education. We need to go down and start educating all the folks at the K1 through 5 age, and we're going to grow our way out of this through education. You're not going to convince a 75-year-old racist to change his stripes. Not going to happen. You're not going to convince a 65-year-old racist to change his stripes. Not going to happen. So he's going to have, or she's going to have, their belief, whether they're white or black. So why are we trying? Let them die off. They got 10, 20 years left. Let them enjoy the rest of their life. And let's work on the next generation.
Yeah.
For those of us, let's work on the next generation and make sure that we can, by the time we're elderly, we can look back and say this is a better world.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'll put those resources again. Yeah. In with this video, and found some organizations that are doing that, if people want to look more into that or contribute or something like that. But yeah, I agree.
I want to get past the right now solution. This isn't a right now solution. It's not like we can throw water on it, hit a button, and we're done. You're going to have to build this for the next generation. Stop trying to build it in our time. If it happens in our time, great. But we can't build it as if we're part of it. We have to build it like we build everything else for our kids.
Yeah. All right, Andre, maybe we'll leave it there.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Always.
Appreciate it. Good to
right.
talk to you.